is past 1 o'clock. I am Councilwoman Sylvia Ortiz. I'm the chair, and if the other two council members would introduce themselves, that'd be great.
Karen Hiller, District 1.
Mr. Kell, would you like to introduce yourself, please? Brett, are you there? He is online. I don't know if he can hear us, but we will continue on. Okay, first order of business is the approval of the June 30th meetings. Minutes, I'm sorry.
Move to approve.
Move to approve. It's been moved to approved. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's 2-0, okay. The next process is before we start that, I would like for you to introduce yourself, if you would, please. I think that's helpful to the members at home. If you'll take a minute to do that.
My name is Audrey Mott. I'm with United Way of Caw Valley, and I'm a grants assistant.
Thank you.
Brett Martin, United Way of Caw Valley.
Thank you.
Juliet McDiffit, United Way of Caw Valley.
Okay.
Carrie Higgins with City of Topeka Housing Services Division.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Jessica, you'll have to come to the mic, please, so they can hear you at home. You're not getting out of this.
Yeah.
Just move up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessica Lenhare, United Way of Caw Valley.
Awesome. You can move up to the table. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and start with number 3. Mr. Cal, there you are. Would you like to introduce yourself? Can you hear me? Brett, can you hear me?
Yes, I just finally got it to work.
Okay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Introduce myself. I'm Councilman Brett Kell, 5th District. That's about all.
That's all. Thank you. Okay, number 3, applicant appeals. And I will turn it over to,
Great. Thank you, Chair. At this time, we have 3 agencies that have appealed the scores for the social services grants application for year 2024. And so at this time, I'll call those to the mic for their appeals.
okay, I'm going to limit them to 4 minutes.
Great.
So I don't know how it's been done in the past, but let me tell you what we're going to do today. You'll have 4 minutes to speak. If you would like to have more time, please request so from the chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chair. So at this time, I'll call Pappin's Landing to the microphone.
Pull it down. It'll work.
If you want to sit right here, you can sit right here.
You want me to sit
Yeah,
here?
there's nobody
I don't,
sitting.
it's not gonna be that long. I'm good here. What I have might seem petty to some people because it's just 2 points, but, I've been there a year, and last year they got nothing. They didn't get enough numbers to even get any funding. And so we got, ding 2 points on a late report, and, that is, let's see, where is it? Past grant administration, we got 3 out of 5. Late in reporting second quarter. There was no reporting last year in the second quarter, and that was before I was there, whether it was or not, and I don't feel that we should be penalized on a past administrator. And so I'm appealing those 2 points.
Okay.
It's a big deal to me because I work very hard for my seniors, very, very hard. So.
Before he answers, a 96% score is pretty darn good, so congratulations.
A 98 is better.
You worked hard on it.
Next year. Hi, Carrie.
So I'm happy to provide some clarification, Chair
Okay.
and committee members as well, Robin. So what we do.
Just a second, please. Are you done, ma'am?
Yeah,
Okay, you can have a seat.
okay.
Thank you, go ahead. Brett.
So typically what we've done in the past, in terms of our practice, is we look at the most recent past grant administration for the city. So as she did mention, they were not awarded dollars in the year 2023, but they were in 2022. And so that's our practice, that's what we look at. And so in 2022, the report was due on July 15th of 2022, and it was submitted on July 19th of 2022. So it was 4 days late in 2022, the second quarter. And so that was what we based the score on for past grant administration. So we use it for the most recent grant that they had through the city of Topeka to be able to make that determination.
Okay. Yes, Karen.
It looks like they have a grant for 2023. That's not so?
No, not
The
for,
spreadsheet
Amount of,
shows. It doesn't say, it makes it look like it's just our money.
it says amount requested, she is correct. According to this spreadsheet, the amount requested was 23,160, 96%. And then the amount awarded was 22,234. Is that correct? Is that what you're talking about, Karen, right?
Well, the discussion was that they were funded in 2022 and were not funded in 2023, I think. And this shows that they are funded in 2023. That was my question.
For 22,153.
I don't have that information in front of me right now. My guess is that's from 2022. And so it was put in the 2023 column, but they were not awarded dollars in 2023. So that number, that could be a typo. That could also be that that was amount they would have been if they had fallen within the threshold. I'd have to take a look at that. I can get some clarification from Joyce, but we do know that they were not awarded dollars in 2023. So I'm not sure what the 22,153 is there. We need to check that, which we can do.
Are you done? Do you have any more questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, so then it looks like if they're late, then they get penalized. Is that correct?
Correct. So there's 5 points possible there, and they were awarded 3 of the 5 points because they were late in that second quarter report in 2022.
Okay.
And again, that was practice we adopted from the city that we've continued.
Okay, I understand that. Yes, Karen?
If I can follow up on that, there had been some, when we transitioned to having you all manage these grants, there had been some push-pull about those measurements and just some concern that the scoring wasn't unreasonably dinged if in fact there maybe had been conversations back and forth, let's say, and by the time it all got resolved, it was over the line, but really the concern had started timely or whatever the situation was. In that case, then you, maybe not just for this case, but overall, are you comfortable that when you get those reports that they really are genuinely just failing to deliver what they're supposed to?
I suppose it could be based on any number of different factors, but when organizations sign the contract, they're contractually obligated to make their quarterly reports. And so the way we picked that up from the city was if there were any late reports, it went from a 5 to a 3. And then if there was significant issue where they were there were multiple quarters that were late, then it would go to a 0 out of 5 score. But typically we've operated where if they are late in any way, it typically goes to a 3. I mean, I suppose, in rather extraordinary circumstances, through extensive conversation, there could be there could be an accommodation made, but that wasn't the case here.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, because I recall that it was a point of contention before, and people have been pretty confident that you all were either seeking reports from the city, or if there wasn't city funding, an alternate funding source, so that everybody was being treated the same.
Correct.
And thoughtfulness and accuracy were in that. So I just wanted to double check. That's one of the reasons we do the appeals, is so people kind of know where we're coming from and are assured, that even if it's not what they wanted, how it got there. So, thank you.
So, help me understand this, and I'm kind of, we'll talk about this later, but I really wanted this weekend to study, and I didn't get it. I don't like that. That'll be a conversation later. I don't know how it's been done in the past, but, so bear with me. So, because they were late last year, we have a new person applying, is that correct?
There's a new executive director of
And-
the agency.
And so the person that was applying last year, she was late? Not the one that we have applying this year, correct?
No, it's the same executive director last year and this year.
Okay.
But from 2022, it was a different executive director.
Okay, I guess that's where I'm going with it, okay.
Yes.
So we don't take that into consideration, we just take it as a rollover?
Yes. Again, that's been our practice in the past.
Has this hurt anybody else in the past as well? I mean, I can see the unfairness of it if I'm new and I've come along and I'm trying to do what I need to do. She didn't sign the contract, the other person did, so I can understand that.
Sure. I suppose in the past that it has. I don't have any specific examples where there's been a change in executive director and there's been points deducted for past grant administration. I don't have any of that in front of me from past years.
This is my issue on that, and then newbies that come in. I never ever thought it was fair for newbies because, of course, they're new and they can't calculate all those. So, Brett, do you have any questions regarding this appeal?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Do you, Karen?
I do not. I do, just for some history for the last few years. I mean, the issue is, if that was the rule, one of the things that what we've seen is that process of a new person applying the first time, sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't,
Right.
because they're learning.
Right.
And so we made sure we kept the appeals process in and kept it here.
Right.
So people that had, and also set up the system with United Way, both pre-application as well as post-application, to be able to ask those questions and learn. And obviously, our new director has put what she's learned from last year to good work. So it's a matter of if that was what the rule was and what the rating was, as long as we thought it was done right. That the hassle before was people saying they'd called in and they didn't get a return phone call, they didn't get the timely assistance that they needed, and then got dinged for something being late. And that's why I asked the questions that I did, because it sounds like that was not, well, we don't know, but it was not the case here. And so it's the organization that's contracting, not the person, and so it'd be kind of tough for us to be individual about it.
I understand that, but we also don't know why this amount is in there for 2023 when they weren't
Understood.
awarding any money. So with that said, I'm gonna do something. And I understand we put processes in place, and you guys can just, I appreciate what you do. I'd like to know why that money is in there, and what I'm gonna do is make a motion that we turn over this appeal and give them the 2 points. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your right, or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
No, and I will explain that that affects others as well. We
I
have-
understand that.
We've held on to this in the past to change the rules if we didn't like the way the rules came out, but not to change allocations. So that would be why my vote is what it is.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you. So the second agency that we have making appeal today is Florence Crittenton. You want to come to the podium or to the table?
Go to the table.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Mary Hoover, and I'm the business manager at Florence Crittenden, and I have with me Jolie Eckert, who is our clinical director. So I handle the fiscal side, and she handles the programmatic side. We're here to appeal the score on one of the outcomes. We did not receive any points for the one that talked about the achievement of outputs and outcomes on prior grants. And I think this was, from what our understanding is, this was kind of a technical issue. We had not had this grant in 2022. This is our first year in 2023. So when we were entering information in there, we used data that we had for the first quarter of 23 instead of a full year. So we do have measurable outputs and outcomes. And I have that information if you don't already have it, but we have a lot of data related to outputs and outcomes for this area that we're requesting. So really, it's as simple as that.
Great, thank you for that. So we can provide some clarification here as vendor. As Ms. Hoover indicated, we did request most recent outputs and outcomes for the program, and they sent them for the first quarter of outputs and outcomes for the social services grant, meaning that it wasn't a full year. That said, in our review, when we looked at our email correspondence with the agency, it became clear to us that the language may not have been clear in the email to the executive director. Once the executive director was made aware of that, she did provide a list of outputs and outcomes for the program for a grant that they receive through another grantor. And those outputs and outcomes, they achieved 100% of those. Again, in our review, we recognize that the language may not have been clear to the executive director, and in looking at the outputs and outcomes, obviously an organization wouldn't meet their outputs and outcomes if there was just one quarter's worth of data provided. This is a larger issue that we hope to address in the September meeting related to process and related to those organizations that have not received city dollars in the past. And we have some process improvements that we want to recommend to the committee for securing those outputs and outcomes in a way that is more favorable for all.
So help me out here. I'm kind of, so they're appealing because they feel like they should have had a larger score?
Yes, so their score, when they sent their outputs and outcomes, there was one outcome that they sent, and it was for one quarter. And when
Right.
we looked at those numbers, they received 0 points. So they received 0 out of 20 for the outputs and outcomes. Through email correspondence and further conversation, they did send us outputs and outcomes for the program, and we have looked at those, and they reached 100% of those.
But that was after the date as well, the cutoff date?
That was after the cutoff date, yes.
And then after you had told them?
Yes, and
So
again.
they were notified that they needed what they needed, and then they got mixed up and didn't
I
provide
believe,
it?
Yeah.
if it's okay,
okay to speak. I believe that we were notified and did provide what was needed, but that was past the date it was originally due.
Correct.
Because the language was unclear that what was needed, we had to actually provide additional grants, a year worth of outcomes through other grants to show that we had outcomes that would have met the criteria for this grant. And we did not know we needed to provide a year of outcomes for other grants, so we only provided the quarter for this grant before the deadline. But as soon as it was requested of us to provide the additional, we did provide the additional within the time frame that was set out to receive it, is my understanding.
Correct.
But there was a technical difficulty in receiving it, which made it look like we had not provided it when we had. And so I think it really came down to a miscommunication of our outcomes.
A technical on your guys' side? then?
So as Ms. Eckert explained, the language in the email, we asked for most recent grant outputs and outcomes. And so the executive director provided 1 quarter's worth rather than an entire year. We didn't say annual, we said most current grant outputs and outcomes. Recognize that in that language moving forward, it needs to be most current annual outputs and outcomes so that those individuals can provide the information.
Okay, committee members?
I'm curious what your recommendation is then. Do you think that this was an error such that their score should be changed in this case?
We do.
Okay, and what does that do to their ranking and prospective allocation? Because right now they don't have any.
It changes it. And we do have some projections here.
Okay, can we hear those, please?
Yes, so so we did a couple of projections, and with the overturning of this decision, it would remove the 86% programs, and there are 2 of them. They would then fall below the cutoff. And then for those that are tied at 87%, they would split the remainder of the dollars available, which would be $21,179. So it would change their amount awarded as well. 21,179 is what would be split between the 2 programs that received 87% scores.
And is that because Flow Crit would get a full 25,000 with that?
They would get, sorry, let me look. They would get 98%. Yes,
Gotcha.
because that would move their score from a 78% to a 98% because of the 20 points.
Sure.
And if the other thing to notice is that this year had some of the highest scores we've ever seen. So we have not had scores this high.
People have been paying attention.
This one, or all of them?
We have higher scores this year in
Overall?
mass overall than we've ever had. The cutoff is rarely this high.
That's what we want. Okay. Brett, do you have anything to add? Mr. Kell?
Sorry, hold. No, I'm good at this time. Compared to last year, yeah, it seems like the numbers are a lot higher than they have been. So.
So you would like us to make a motion to overturn this?
So that's our recommendation. It ultimately rests with the committee, what the committee wants to do, but we recognize the lack of clarity in the email correspondence. And again, the larger issue of securing outputs and outcomes from organizations that haven't been prior grantees And again,
Okay.
we've got a process improvement for that.
Committee members, is there anyone like to make that motion?
I'll move to approve the recommendation from the vendor.
It's been moved. Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion. Discussion?
I think we all just need to be aware that that means we lose 2 more agencies or have to come up with some more money. 2 agencies that thought they were funded.
Oh. that would-
Yeah, I mean,
That would
it's,
kick them out.
yes, that was my point before, but I appreciate the feedback from staff.
Does staff know where would, if we were to approve this, where the other money would come from, or where the other, who would be knocked out?
Just describe that.
We have the 2 that were at 86% that would move down. I would just say this, in the notifications that go out, we do explain to all applicants that these award amounts are contingent on the
Approval.
appeals process, on the approval of the Social Services Grants Committee, and the approval by the council of the entire budget. So these are preliminary numbers that do go to them.
Okay.
My thought process is that we put United Way in charge of going through all this for us. They recognize they made a mistake. So, or something happened that, shouldn't be punished, the one we're talking about right now. So, if it wasn't, the error was not made, this would have been happening anyways.
Yeah, that's correct. Is there any more discussion? Any more discussion? If not, let's vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pay close attention to that. Any and all, send it all in.
Okay, our final appeal will come from Topeka Rescue Mission.
Hi, my name is Christian Stringfellow. I'm here to represent the Topeka Rescue Mission. This is, I believe the first time we've applied for a city grant or for city dollars. And so we were treading into new waters here. I just had a few points I wanted to ask for clarification on. In further review of our application, we realized there were a few mistakes. And so, one, I want to fully address that and recognize that, and then also try to use this as an opportunity for us to learn, better going forward. So the first mistake was that our activities were misstated, and so instead of stating the things that would be done, we had stated that reducing homelessness, which was not very clear. And so that's something we'll take note, of in the future. The other mistake that we made also is that proposed outputs were missing. I do want to just kind of ask a few questions about some of the grading on a few of the different points. The first one being the question where it says organization manages program effectively. There was a comment that was made as we were marked for 3 of 5 points. It says the comment was quite a lot of non-direct assistance expenses for a rent and utility program not meeting outcomes or outputs. My question on that was in reviewing our budget for that program, it depends, I think a lot of that depends on on whether salaries of the employees are actually administering those services are included in the direct or non-direct assistance category. So with that, I think there was $155,000 that was noted for the salaries of 4 different employees. And then also, I believe 200-some thousand for the actual rent assistance to help individuals with their rent and deposits. If that was the accounting for the direct assistance and then also the salaries of the staff to provide that direct assistance, I think only about 1.3% of the total budget was non-direct. assistance expenses. Also, there was a comment for that the program was not meeting outcomes or outputs. This program, over the last couple of years, has been incredibly effective. We had, over the last year, we had 135 people that were referred to the program that actually were housed successfully. So that's a 100% success rate of that one over last year's time. The second question I had was regarding the organizational leadership. So the question, or the category is, organizational leadership is strong and maintains community-based representation. We were docked 2 points, 2 of 5 points, or essentially 40%, because 75% of representation on our board of directors is male. And so we really tried to construct our board in a way that addresses the needs of the guests or the individuals that are coming to us. And so we have our president of the board is a female. She's a judge, so representation from the judicial or legal system. We have doctors. We have people representing the education system and also ministry, as we are a ministry. So my question is, with 25, well, essentially 40% of the scoring being docked for that 1 point, I just want to request and see what we can do in order to, in the future, guarantee a higher score in that area. My third question is essentially kind of a combination of two different things. First off, we were marked for the past grant administration is effective. We were marked for 3 of 5 points. They also listed a late report, with this being our first city grant application, and that late report being from a former United Way application. I was wondering if that would be something to be applicable to this situation as well. And then also where the same point that was just mentioned before me, where the applicant has achieved outputs and outcomes on prior grants, per meaningful measures, we were marked or given 10 of 20 points. That 5 of 13 outcomes or outputs had been met. Our CARE program is, I believe, the only other program that we have that has received a grant from the United Way, which the CARE program stands for Career Readiness Education, and something that we take very, as a high value to us is to helping our guests get into employment. But we also have to take into consideration the challenges that our guests come with. So over the last several years, we've seen a change in the dynamics, or essentially the dynamics of homelessness. We've seen increases in mental health. We've seen increases in addiction. We've seen increases of the overall average age of our guests. And so with that, a program like a CARE or Career Readiness Education program is likely going to have some issues meeting all proposed outcomes. This being the first time we've applied for city funding, I just request that be taken into consideration. And that also the high success rate that we have had with this particular program in helping those who do not have access to live resource get into stable housing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'm happy to walk through each of these and to be able to provide some clarity. So on the first piece in the appeal related to the 3 out of 5 points on organization manages program effectively, there was a comment on there related to the quite a lot of non-direct assistance expenses for a rent and utility program. But the reason for the reduction from 5 points to 3 points was related to the comment not meeting outcomes and outputs. So when the reviewers were looking at the applications, if they saw that they met 50% or fewer of their outcomes, they used that information to be able to inform their score on program management. The idea being effective program management would have the program achieving more than 50% of the outcomes. Related to organizational leadership, the rubric that we were provided by the City of Topeka Social Services Grants Committee says that in order to reflect community-based representation, a board must have less than 70% of one gender, and 6 of 8, as Mr. Springfellow suggested, is 75%, and so that exceeded the 70% on the rubric. And so that was the reason for the reduction in points there. Related to outputs and outcomes, so our practice has been in the past when we do not have an organization that has information already in the grant management system from prior grants, then we have a process that we move through. That first process is to check with the city to see if there are any outputs or outcomes in any other system that they have. We did contact city staff, and city staff said that they did not have outputs or outcomes for this program. So then the next step was to go to a United Way grant, which is what we do. We have access to those. And we looked at those, and we looked at the CARE program as a comparable program. And as Mr. Springfellow said, there were 5 of the 13 outputs and outcomes met there. And so they received the 50%, being 10 out of 20 points. Yeah, I believe those were the. That's the substance of the appeal.
I know in talking to Mr. Falker before, in my years on the council, he's always said they didn't want city funding. And I was actually surprised that they never had city funding. And so that was a choice that I think the mission has made. So this would be just like a new start for them, basically. That's how I look at it. I've never been one to, that's been my only hang up on this, because there's good organizations out there, and I get it, they gotta start somewhere if they're going to do that, but that's always been my hang up. But I think it's fair across the board, because any new person that comes through is gonna go through that same process and have the same outcome. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just some feedback, and I'm not sure I followed all of the nuances that you described were concerns, but one that I read and recall, I'm not sure Brett addressed, was that issue of what is your overhead and what is your program expense. And so maybe it's not even something we have to say here, but certainly the staffing and all the time that they spend with the guests at the rescue mission and in outreach and so on is part of your program. And so sometimes just clarifying that they are direct service, not just the rent. Obviously, you don't just give away rent and utility money, and it doesn't take any people to make those decisions or to do it. So it sounds like maybe you already came up with that one. You also made a mention of both your housing program and the CARES program. And you may or may not know, but sometimes agencies apply for more than one program. Mm-hmm. And if the way to address that internally for you all, as well as with funders, now that you're putting your toe in the water in the grant arena, is to separate them so that it's clear what the outcomes. I mean, if there's a difference between getting a job or getting into school and staying at least 6 months than getting housing and staying there at least 6 months, especially as we move toward housing first in so many good ways, to get people settled and not have their job success tied to that, really. So that could help your outcomes. And the other thing is that and I used to run a nonprofit myself and write these grants, so learned it when everybody else was, as you are now. you do need to be realistic about your outcomes. And if a good outcome for somebody who has gotten housing is that whatever that percentage of them are, people, I think there was a comment in here, they were wanting to know that they were still there, that they didn't just get them moved in, which one could argue is an output. Yay, got them dropped off, we're done. But we all know that that's not what you're doing, or at least I don't think so. And so I saw some comment about follow-up for that. So if your routine and you're investing in staff time to check on people regularly, and your measure of success, a secondary measure is that they're still there 6 months later and in good standing, then working on defining those outcomes. And if it's tough, I mean, we used to do home ownership. Our measure was 10% because people come to homebuyer counseling to figure out whether they're ready, and a lot of them aren't. And so at least out of an education program, they're not ready to go. And so not being afraid to have a reasonable outcome. And if, none of us ever want that percent to drop, of course. And so we're doing everything we can to hold it. But it's something to think about when you're living outcomes and outputs, and might help. Thank you, that's it.
Brett, do you have anything to add?
We don't at this time.
No,
I'm
it's
sorry,
kinda like,
Councilman Kell. Too many
Brett.
Bretts. Too many Bretts.
we go way back, Councilman Ortiz, so you can call me whatever. But yeah, pretty much like it's been stated several times, is kind of this is a learning experience, and that's kind of also what the appeals is used for, is a learning experience. So I at this point, I don't see any reason for any changes, really.
Okay. Now, Mr. Brett.
Thank you. We don't have anything to add at this time.
Okay, those are the three. So I'd like to know where do we go from here with the amount that was awarded for Pabst Landing? Will we need to meet again on that?
Yes, so what we will need to do is,
And then you'll also need to probably update this as well?
correct.
So at that time.
Correct. So what we are prepared to do is to take this information based on the two appeals, go back and put together a new set of social services grants award recommendations. We want to make sure we're thorough with that, and we've dotted all of our I's and crossed all of our T's. And then once we're able to do that, we can send that to this committee, and this committee, I'm assuming based on process, will need to meet again to approve that set of award recommendations. And then at that time, we will send out new award recommendations to the agencies and let them know that again, these amounts now are contingent on city council approval, but not on appeals, because we've already gone through that process.
Okay. I would like to ask staff to make sure that we have all the money that's available to us. Liz, can you do that, please? Thank you. Karen?
I think that this allocation totals the amount, the 434,904 is how much is in the was authorized at first in the recommendations. So you're going to adjust the numbers, but that will have spent 100% of the combination of general fund and CDBG money that's there. I would share, just for your consideration, I guess, or ours, and I don't usually do this, but I asked, we've not raised that money, that number, in a number of years. When we had our meeting and voted through the recommendations for that year, I asked the city manager at the time, who was at the meeting, whether it would be possible for us to do some sort of cost of increase in this, and his answer was a flat no, and we did not argue with him and did not do that.
Who was that? City manager?
Steve Wade.
It was Steve.
And so a consideration, I mean, 86% is a pretty darn good score, I would say. that, a possibility, and we'd need to do it right away, to ask for additional funds that would cover that. Maybe upping our dollars that we're making available, starting next year. And,
What are you looking at? How much more are you looking at to add?
well, we just cut $25,000 roughly. So whatever that exact number is, we need to add back just to break even and and not cut the 3 agencies that we just cut. 4 agencies that we just cut by voting in the extra. It's an option. We, based on our process, we either have to vote it through and leave it as is with the amended numbers, or we could ask the council to provide some additional if we chose.
But my question is, how much additional?
It's about $25,000.
You're saying 25?
Yep.
I don't know how you're figuring
Right?
that.
So, well, I could offer one more point of clarity here, and that is on the 86 scores. When we got to the 86th percent score, we had 2 at 86%. You'll notice that the amount available was
They're split. They're lower than
Correct.
86% of what they asked for, because you split in half what was left at that point.
correct. So what we do is we take the total amount that they requested, and then we take the ratio of that. So one requested 25,000, one requested 21,500. We add those together, and then we take the ratio of what percent the 25,000 was of the 46,500 that was requested, and then we take the ratio of what the 21,500 was of the 46.5, so that they're getting it proportionate to their ask, and then we apply that to the dollars that are available. So if there were conversation related to fully investing in the 286% programs, it would be higher than 25.
So we need another, I'm looking at it, roughly another 14. So we'd be talking about maybe, rough numbers, 25,000 just to make up what we just changed, and 40 if we wanted to make that, roughly 40 to make the whole list whole.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Because we can think about it if we aren't finished today, but, and in his defense, I talked to Steve later, and it was his first time through the hearings, right? And he thought I was talking about 2023, not 2024, so, whatever.
Do we know how long this amount has been like this? Do you know, Brett?
I don't. It's been roughly the same for a few years because we haven't changed that amount on the RFP.
Okay, I'll ask finance. Okay.
Just wanted to throw that in before we broke.
Okay.
A lot of ideas for spending extra money, so I don't know where it would go, but it's an option.
So the other piece for us to keep in mind in terms of time frame is that we based on the RFP and based on communications from us, we need to notify the agencies about any changes within 7 calendar days of appeal.
Ooh.
So this has to, again, and that's in the RFP, and so that has to turn fairly quickly. We can have amended dollars by first thing tomorrow morning. Well, I just want to make sure everybody on the team looks at them so that we're
So what you're saying is we need to meet by Friday?
correct.
Because I have to send it out.
Correct. And so if it goes out on Friday, then it is within the 7 calendar days. Otherwise, it would need to go out by Sunday. So,
But, I mean, you would notify those whom this would impact.
It would impact everybody.
yes, yeah. So we would just send out a whole new set of pieces to everyone. And again, we have that ready. I mean, it really does affect the 2 at the bottom. The 100% are still going to get all of what they ask for. So it really does just affect those right at that cutoff.
That's what I,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
When
and
you
so-
said everybody, I'm
Sorry.
thinking 27?
No. So we will then send,
We have a big meeting on
we
Friday.
would, right. No, we would send it out to everyone again as the final amounts. But it would not change the 100%, 98%, 96%, 94% scores.
Yeah.
It would just change those bottom two.
So they would get something different, is what you're saying,
Correct.
than what they'd gotten before. Everybody
Right.
else would get, well, we'd have 2 adjustments also.
Right. And so with those 2 adjustments, and then the 2 adjustments at the bottom potentially, and so we can run some different numbers for you all. We could send you 2 different sets of recommendations. One recommendation would be based on the 2 appeals today, just as it stands, and then wherever it falls is wherever it falls. The other thing we could do is we could, and of course that would then exhaust the 434,904. The other thing we could do is we could run another set of recommendations that has the 2 86% scores at 86% of their request. And then that would increase the 434,904, and we would be able to show that difference. That's another thing we could provide. The final thing we could provide is we could provide another number, if you wish, that kept the 286% at where they are right now, without the appeals. And so that's not the full 86%. That's just their ratio of their request
Right.
and what was available. We're happy to provide any and all of those 3. But we don't want to overcomplicate it either. We just want you to make sure you have enough information to make.
Well, since I threw out those 2
Decisions.
alternates, I think what you're talking about is the same thing we just talked about.
Yeah.
So,
Excuse me. I would like to see any and all.
Okay, great. So we can have all 3 of those in the morning. That said, I'd just like to remind the committee that there is one appeal, and so there is no other appeal process. So if there are folks who get the recommendations on Friday and they have been affected, there is no other opportunity to appeal. There's only one appeal opportunity, and that's why we remind the folks that it's not about appealing whether or not you get dollars, it's about appealing your score. And we're very clear in the RFP that if you're at that cutoff score, you may not get the full amount of the percent of what you requested, because it's whatever the remaining dollars are.
But you made that clear at the beginning, so.
Yes, and we
that's-
have had that problem in the past. And we had someone come appeal, and when we explained it in the appeal process, we recognized that we needed to say that very clearly in the RFP and in the grant workshop, and we do that now.
As long as it's been made clear, that's what's fair to me, and that's,
so just to clarify, that those 2 who would be notified that their scores had changed, that would simply be a notification, not their score, their allocation had changed. They would be advised of it, but there is not an opportunity for either of those 2 to appeal. So we would not have any appeals at this second meeting. that we're
Correct, there would be no
having.
appeals. Again, the RFP just allows for one appeal.
And they're just appealing over their scoring, not, so.
Or they would be appealing what they get, not,
Yeah.
But if
not
you
on
get
their
a pretty
score.
good score and you go, okay, it's over, I'm not gonna,
Right, right. Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
okay. Thank you, Chair.
okay.
Should we set a meeting time now, since it's so soon?
I will let Liz do that.
Okay.
Liz, you do know the importance of this, correct?
I guess since we're
Okay,
all
Brett,
here.
I'll let you and Liz work that out. Because we'll have Zoom capabilities, so.
Just don't know if people are traveling or even around.
Is anybody traveling on Friday? Well, we're gonna have to travel and revisit this. Come back to this destination,
Thanks.
okay? Is there anything else to come before this meeting? Anything else? If not, it's going to be a hot week. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.